You have to ask what counts as corruption for purposes of criminal punishment, or what counts as corruption for purposes of ethical regulations that are enforced by non-criminal sanctions, the rule of the House that might lead to expulsion from the House or censure or whatever.
Corruption in law is a very prominent thing here in the United States of America. It can refer to many different circumstances, including bribery, racial and ethnic prejudice, and simply one group not being treated the same as everyone else. The whole reason the USA is so popular is because of the so-called freedom and safe place that it is seen to be. But is it really? Is the USA legal system really as fair to a wealthy individual as it is to a common civilian? It's time to bring this topic to light.
I had friends all through town. The issue was not American culture, it wasn't Western culture, it wasn't religion, it was corruption. And that really blew my mind.
They'll retaliate not only against you, but your family. They'll make your life, a living hell.
Let's get down to the absolute basics. What is corruption in law? Corruption in law pretty much refers to how equally one another is being treated and being judged in the court of law, and how equally each law is being implemented on every single individual.
There could be another form in which there are established principles of law set by the highest court of the land, which could be the Supreme Court of the US or Supreme Court of India, and a judge ignores those positions of law and gives an opinion which is completely contrary to the established principles of law.
What mechanisms exist to ferret out this behavior?
We had a lot of instruction from the judge about how to think about the evidence presented by the prosecution.
Here's an interesting fact. Let's assume that a highly respected police officer broke specific rules, punishing an individual whom are a part of a specific community and being extremely lenient toward others. The way that the police officer will most likely be punished is by his own branch of government. How is separation of powers being implemented? All I see is an individual being punished by his own branch. I don't think that's fair. A common form of punishment toward police officers is through paid suspension, and that's literally just vacation for doing a highest crime.
The cause of this was primarily very severe laws that were passed in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s in response to increasing crime rates.
According to Princeton University, laws are more likely to be implemented if you're part of the top 10% of individuals. Let's look at this graph, for example. The x-axis represents the percentage of people who actually want the change, while the y-axis represents the percentage of this change actually being implemented. As you observe on said graph, let's look at the red line, the oh so mighty top 10% of people. If they don't want a law to be enacted, then there's a 7% chance of that law actually being implemented. But if they do want a law to be implemented, there's a 57% chance of that law actually being enacted. Now let's look at everyone else. Everyone between the bottom 10% income and everyone between the top 10% income. The graph is just a straight line. Let's assume that everyone of said group really does want a policy change. There's a 30% chance of that policy actually happening. That's pretty good, right? But look at this. If everyone in that group does not want a policy change, then there's still a 30% chance of that policy actually changing. It's almost the exact same, if not a bit lower. Can you see the absolute difference in opinion? What the top 10% think can either make or break everyone else's opinion. What I'm saying is, the legislative branch only cares if you have money. Over the past 20 years, corruption has been an extremely prominent thing of the United States of America. Many cases have been documented, such as a Supreme Court justice accepting gifts from billionaire benefactors. This may be seen as a case of scrutiny and corruption against the USA government. Justices should disclose free trips such as this to avoid interaction within the courthouse visits. However, as stated in BBC, Justice Thomas's disclosure report, he had reportedly failed to divulge several such gifts, raising questions over whether Mr. Crow could have leveraged their friendship to influence business before the court. In conclusion, corruption was and still is a very prominent thing in the United States of America. Corruption can only be solved through group effort. If we all together worked as a community, we can find a plausible solution to this inhumanity. Then only will the severe issue die down and there'll be equality and fairness to every individual, rich or poor, black or white, tall or short. Everyone should have equality in a courtroom, a place where wrongs are paid for. So, this is it for this presentation, and we hope that corruption will cease to be a problem in a safe society. Thank you so much.